Rain is louder when you're scared. I learned that in a Riverton alley where my heel snapped, my ankle folded, and two guys decided my bag mattered more than my body. I said, "Please don't, I can't walk," and one of them laughed like he'd earned the right to. Then a voice cut through the rain, steady, low, "Step away from her." I turned and saw Darius work boots, old hoodie, calm eyes. Not a hero out of a movie, just a man who knew what to do with his hands and his breath. First guy swung, Darius caught the wrist and set it against the brick like you'd set a glass on a table. Second guy lunged. Darius swept his legs, the rain did the rest. "Walk away," he said. And they did, because sometimes the right voice reminds cowards they have options. He crouched by me with his hands open, said, "You okay?" And I gave him my name instead of an answer. Elena, because when you've been accused of things you didn't do, your name is the only proof that feels real. He picked me up like he'd carried harder nights, and 2 flights later, we were in a warm, tired apartment that smelled like lemon cleaner and toast. A crooked rainbow drawing on the fridge, paperbacks sagging on a shelf. A 6-year-old with shark socks peeking from the hallway. "This is Captain Noodle," she said, placing a stuffed sloth in my lap. "He helps with scary." I hadn't been given anything without strings in years, so I thanked the sloth like a general reporting for duty. Over tea and a bottle of rubbing alcohol, I told Darius why my face had been plastered across business blogs that morning. How Greyline Capital, smart buildings, smarter lies, found evidence I'd moved money off sheet after I asked why the math smelled wrong. How I got walked out past a lobby I used to own, with my badge and my smile. "You have proof," he said, not poking, just naming. I touched my bag and nodded a drive, some emails, the bones they tried to bury. "You don't talk like a janitor," I told him, and he smiled without showing teeth. I used to wear ties, then I buried my wife and learned how quiet a mop can be. Quiet's useful, people forget. You're there, you know what I mean? Next morning I told him about North Line Station, locker C14, where I'd hidden the drive the night they froze my accounts, and he said he'd be back by 10 with the calm of a man who leaves a room and always returns to it. He was followed, of course, because men like Victor Lang and Miles Ardell hire people who think they're invisible. Darius shook them at Blue Finch Books on Harbor Street, a used place that smells like second chances, slipped the drive into a hollowed-out Moby Dick third shelf right of the desk. Poetry with a mean streak, then 2 clean boys in black boots kicked the back door and learned what happens when paper and gravity team up. Darius came home with a bruise that made little Piper whisper "ow" on his behalf. "I said I should leave," he said. "You can, but you don't have to. You're not the danger." And for the first time in months, I believed someone. We looped in Ruth Calder at a closed diner after hours. Hard eyes, softer heart, the kind of reporter who never traded a spine for a byline. She said we needed verification and timing, or they'd spin me into a punchline. Darius slid her the whale with a secret belly. Ruth didn't blink, just said, "Okay," and we seeded truth like breadcrumbs, an unredacted name in an old contract to a tax blogger who sleeps with spreadsheets under his pillow. A redacted Slack capture to a watchdog forum, where people smell smoke before smoke knows it's smoke. A single highlighted cell to a data nerd who talks in pivot tables, and the water started to stir, you could feel it, CFO. Ardell tugged his tie, CEO Lang told legal to draft confidence, you could taste the fear in. We didn't wait for permission. We went live from the back of Blue Finch, 2 lamps, a folding chair, no makeup, just breath and a room full of paper. "My name is Elena Hart," I said. "I did good work for a company that turned out to be good at hiding harm. I stayed quiet because quiet keeps you invited, then the numbers led to places our filings didn't, and I couldn't keep pretending I'd lost my nose. I admitted I'd worn the wrong jersey too long, and I held up receipts not to win a fight, but to stop a theft dressed like innovation, and people listened. You can tell when your voice stops bouncing off walls and starts hitting ribs. Grayline denied, of course they did. Anonymous accounts called me bitter, unstable, ungrateful. Two tidy men tried to plant ears under Aunt Leona's porch and met a flashlight and an old bat with stories we moved to the abandoned St. Bridget School out on County Road 9, honest fuse box, honest dust, and built a war room out of butcher paper and stubborn hope. That's where Owen Park found us ex-compliance at a disaster relief nonprofit attached to Grayline. Like a remora, he brought memos that said, the quiet part out loud. Relief money rinsed through shell companies while folks were still boiling brown water. And he slid me a folder like a confession. Please make it mean something. My chest hurt in a way that wasn't fear. Ruth mirrored everything on servers in places where rich men pretend to love boats, then hit publish on a dossier called Pay Dirt. The ledger. They buried, and for a minute it felt like oxygen comments turned into affidavits. A clerk sent proof of a signature that somehow signed in 2 states. At once an ex-intern wrote, they told me I misread the room. Looks like the room was wrong. Then the machine responded the way machines respond, when you throw a wrench in the right gear. The hotel fire started behind a breaker that hadn't complained in 20 years. Yeah, that happened. We got out with smoked lungs and mirrored files, and the smear campaign turned vicious. They said I staged sources, that Darius was a paid thug. It would have cut deeper if I hadn't watched him teach Piper how to double knot laces so recess doesn't end early. Then they took Piper. 10 minutes of ordinary was all it took. I went to the bathroom. Ruth nodded off under a quilt. Darius fought a generator in Dolores Wynn's barn like it owed him rent. When I came back, the couch was warm and the blanket was folded and a note sat on the pillow. Stop, or she disappears forever. My scream found me. Darius found tracks, a red hair tie in the brush. Good girl, he told the trees. A trailer park kid stepped out with a shaky voice and pointed toward the old ironworks off 14. Black SUV lady with gloves, don't look. And Darius ran, because fathers run toward fire. I loaded the pistol Dolores handed me without commentary, and drove like anger already knew the route. The warehouse tasted like old metal. Piper sat tied to a chair with the kind of loose knot cowards call mercy sable. Quinn stood beside her black coat, quiet shoes, the fixer you hire when you want to erase fingerprints and sleep badly later. Your clock's running out, she said. Darius stilled like a river about to flex. I raised the gun. I'd never aimed at a person in my life, but when your kid is behind the target, you learn what steady means. Step back, I said. Sable smiled. This ending is already written, not by you. I told her and Darius moved. Not a punch, a decision. He kicked her weapon away, pinned her wrist with the weight of a man who's done being polite. I cut Piper free with my house key. She flew into my neck and said, You came, and I answered what I'd been waiting to hear from myself. I will always come outside. Headlights flooded the bay, and I braced for more of Sable's quiet shoes. It was Ruth and 2 local reporters she'd bullied into courage, and the county sheriff, who looked allergic to corporate threats. Sable tried 7 different lawyer words. The cuffs clicked anyway. Piper got cocoa. I faced the cameras and said, They took a child to fix a spreadsheet. Remember that? When they say I'm dramatic, and by morning 5 channels had run the footage before Grayline could say defamation by lunch, a Republican and a Democrat from counties that don't share diners signed the same letter to the feds. And I stood on the steps of the Franklin Capitol, with note cards Piper had decorated, and said, If you're waiting for permission to tell the truth you carry, consider this yours. People clapped, like they meant it. Some cried quietly. A man in a suit clapped tiny and angry and made a phone call. That will matter later. Machines don't retire because a few gears jam, but sometimes the belt slips and the room hears it. 6 months isn't enough time to change the world, but it's enough to change your posture. Greyline shuffled leadership and bought new words. Contracts got paused, renamed, reshuffled federal letters, arrived in thick envelopes that smell like toner and consequences. Ruth started teaching high schoolers how to verify before they share. Darius spoke at Howard about vocation and the kind of courage that clocks in. Piper gave Captain Noodle a cape I wrote, chapters at a kitchen table that doesn't overlook a skyline. And one night, a burner phone lit up with a 3-second clip of a glass office view I used to know, and a voice I haven't forgotten saying round 2. I watched it twice, put the phone in a drawer, and made pancakes shaped like hearts that looked more like Idaho. There's a difference between running and moving forward. I learned that in a warehouse with bad lighting and the truest echo I've ever heard. My daughter saying, "You came." So tell me, when you hear the word whistleblower, what picture shows up? Hero, traitor, neighbor who got tired of swallowing it. Have you ever watched a company call Theft Innovation because the logo was shiny and the suit fit, do you think? What happened to Greyline was justice or just a warm-up round? Drop your take in the comments, argue with me, correct me, tell me your own story if you've got one, you know what I mean. I'm listening.